Florida storm risk growing, and Carlotta in the Pacific on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 2nd. We didn't have a bulletin for the first of the month because I was out storm chasing here in the UK, but we are back today with Tropical Storm Carlotta on the verge of hurricane status and other areas of interest across the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific, which could all develop in the next few days, but of course pretty much all eyes on that area of interest in the Atlantic. Invest 97L on day 63 of Atlantic hurricane season, an 80% chance of development. It looks like it will still be relatively weak when it moves through the Florida Panhandle, but it is starting to look more like it will strengthen perhaps rapidly at times off the coast of the Carolinas later on, and really unknown how much of land impact that will cause. Well, a mess here in the Eastern Pacific on day 80 of hurricane season, and models are increasingly adding further weight to a future area of interest near where Carlotta is right now, as well as the other areas of interest that are currently active. Very confusing situation. And in the Western Pacific, we've got a 20% area of interest now that has emerged, possibly riding along the ridge, moving northwards in general, away from the Mariana Islands towards the northern reaches of Japan next week. In the North Indian Ocean, no areas of interest. There is a little disturbance moving inland over India right now, which will probably be producing lots of heavy rain and a little bit of a low pressure there as well. But still, so far, only the one tropical storm that we've seen this year. And in the Southwest Indian Ocean, no areas of interest to talk about right now. As you would expect, of course, at this time of year, it doesn't really start to get going again there until at least October. So let's take a look at the two areas that we're watching most closely. Of course, first, Tropical Storm Carlotta, nearly a hurricane, right next to Isla Clarión once again, just like Bud was a couple of weeks ago, or just 1 week ago, I think. 47 kilometers from Isla Clarión, 337 from Socorro Island, 662 from Cabo San Lucas, 1605 from San Diego, and 4250 from Hawaii. It probably won't get there, but it is heading out towards the west-northwest, and well, it really is following in the footsteps of Bud. And 97L is perched along the coast of Cuba right now, just 3 kilometers from Playa Covarrubias. Goodness me. 19 from Puerto Padre, 126 from Camagüey, 354 from Santa Clara, and 605 from Miami. So no watches or warnings yet, but they are considering it, making this a potential tropical cyclone. In order to do that, there could be tropical storm force winds in Florida within the next 48 hours. So that takes us to Sunday daytime for potential storm impacts. So let's check the latest satellite imagery then. First of all, Carlotta. Let you decide whether you think this might be a hurricane yet or not. It is mighty close, and it's probably going to do that in the next couple of days. We are expecting a strong Category 1 peak and probably sustain Category 1 strength for a good 24 to 36 hours. But there it is right now, just about passing Isla Clarión there, that small island off the coast there. Out to sea, I should say, and it is just offshore there to the northeast, the centre of this storm. Looking decent on the western side. I think it may have actually looked a little bit better earlier. Not quite as much convection now as we were seeing earlier, but still a decent looking core and a big band extending off its northern side. Some more imagery here showing those cloud tops into the minus 80s earlier, just one or two little spots now, generally still minus 70s, a little bit weak on that eastern side. Well, here's Invest 97L then, and tenuous centre location because it doesn't really have one yet. It's just still a big clump of clouds that are trying to develop there, and I think it will be probably quite slow to form. So I think it will form before it gets to Florida, but it will probably only be a tropical depression or weak tropical storm landfall. Famous last words, of course, in the Atlantic, because it always seems to be the area where bad things happen. Either way, we are looking at probably quite a lot of precipitation from this storm, as we'll be watching in the model runs a little bit later. There it is right now, dumping quite a bit of rainfall over eastern and central Cuba and over large parts of the Bahamas as well right now. And this is the other area of interest in the Eastern Pacific, the one out west that we've got a 30% chance for. It's actually looking quite good there. Lots of convection blowing up off its western and southwestern side into the -80s in a large area there. It actually just waned a little bit in those latest frames, and the structure doesn't really show a likely circulation. This is another invest, 91W near the Ogasawara Islands. I have no idea why this is here, but there it is. If anyone has an idea of why they've done that, then feel free to voice that in the comments. Anyway, back to the general regional areas now off the coast of the United States there. We've got a little frontal system moving offshore. You can even see on this raw visible a lot of dry air and Saharan dust in the area as well. This is actually old imagery, so I don't think we ought to do anything about that. And this is the coast of Africa right now, just moving out into the Atlantic Ocean. Imagery's been a bit all over the place lately, and you can see there it's sort of crossing between one day and the next, but those latest frames are the most recent, and you can see the Eastern Pacific looking very disturbed with disturbances all over the place, with a few systems on the radar, of course. Western Pacific then, a lot of the activity is way out east. You can see here, it looks quite odd, doesn't it? Over the northern Micronesian islands east there, and towards the Mariana Islands, still a little bit of storminess over the Philippines, and there's that disturbance moving inland over eastern India as well, almost looking at that cyclonic look about it, certainly producing a lot of rainfall. Looking out west, there's more monsoonal pattern showers occurring over Pakistan today and moving out off the coast of western India as well. Some big thunderstorms over there off the west coast of the Arabian Peninsula too, in western Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Looking at sea surface temperatures, still extremely warm right now off the coast of Mexico, and increasing up to towards 32 degrees Celsius actually, and a lot of it in the Gulf of Mexico. Just look at this, absolutely prime for substantial storm development there off the coast of Florida, which is why we can't really rule anything out. Off towards the Gulf Stream as well, looking decent out towards the outer banks of the Carolinas. And this is the Western Pacific, extremely warm waters extending a long, long way north as well, off the southern islands of mainland Japan now. Temperatures over 30 degrees Celsius, really crying out for some big storm, which will be taking up all of that energy. And in the North Indian Ocean, a fair amount as well. Temperatures up to 29 degrees in the northern part of the Bay of Bengal. Compared to average, the Atlantic is still well above 3 degrees above average in the main development region, 2 to 3 degrees in the Gulf, and in the subtropical zones, extremely warm waters off Atlantic Canada, over 5 degrees above normal. Eastern Pacific, a few spots there, 3 degrees above as well, including where Carlotta is right now, so it's going to benefit from that. Western Pacific as well, 2 to 3 degrees above average in general. Off Japan, it's 4 degrees above, and off Korea as well. Sea surface oceanic heat content actually looking extremely good as well off the coast of the Philippines. Extremely high values still extending out well towards the east, and quite high values near Okinawa. Eastern Pacific not looking quite so good, it has to be said, but still a few spots off the coast of Mexico. Atlantic also looking extremely good too. High amounts of energy there. South of Puerto Rico, moving westwards through Jamaica into the western Gulf of Mexico and eastern Gulf as well, and around the Bahamas too. That little area there getting into the oranges as well. So here it is, and the GFS model this morning is suggesting that we will be seeing a substantial tropical cyclone, although not before it reaches Florida. It's going to be afterwards, possibly even intensifying as it crosses over the peninsula, reaching Florida near the Fort Myers area, probably as a weak tropical storm there, just about gets tropical storm status, and then it slides in there, moves northeastwards, and then becomes a much more powerful tropical storm, stalls off North Carolina near Myrtle Beach, I think, and then becomes a fully fledged hurricane and strengthens a bit more as it heads towards the Outer Banks. There's Carlotta moving westwards, hurricane phase there for a good couple of days, and then you've got these two systems trying to develop on top of each other. That's why we've given both of them moderate chances now, because we've really no idea how that's going to materialize. both of them there colliding with each other almost really, and it really gets in the way of the one further back that we were thinking it was going to strengthen and become a very powerful hurricane. Well, it looks like we might have a binary system now, almost two hurricanes there, and other models are pretty much on board with that as well at this point, which is why it's become more of a mainstream prediction here. Now, looking at the rainfall expectations off the coast of the United States and over Florida there, we're looking at a few areas northwest of Lake Okeechobee, getting to some high values there, around 6 or 8 inches of rain there, and off the coast of South Carolina and North Carolina, some really high amounts there as well. Just off the coast there, over 20 inches of rain. Could be a massive rain event if it just pushes a little bit further in towards land. In general, everywhere should be expecting 2 inches of rain or more, including over Cuba. What happens in the longer range? Well, the hurricane moves right off there, slams into Newfoundland actually, possibly still as a tropical hurricane. Either way, still with strong hurricane force winds if that was to take place. It's not too far out. It is on August the 9th there, slamming through the eastern part of Newfoundland and then moving on towards the British Isles and Western Europe, still with tropical storm force winds, but obviously no longer tropical. What happens with the Eastern Pacific systems? Well, a crazy little interaction there. That's probably not going to happen, but either way, we're probably going to see both of those systems form. And then this next thing in the Atlantic, look at that. Is it a Harvey wannabe? Another system trying to develop through the Yucatan Peninsula into the southern Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche, moving northwestwards in the end, and just looking further west, some more little low pressure systems trying to develop there in the Central Pacific. They won't succeed. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts still available right now as well, because we've still got no sign of that storm named Hone. Well, there's the silly range. It is thankfully silly at the moment, but it is a hurricane landfall there near Corpus Christi. Beryl vibes once again, isn't it? Moving inland quite quickly there. Only just manages to get to Category 1 status before continuing inland over Texas and eventually towards New Mexico as a remnant low. Will that happen? Still very tenuous. We are well into towards the end of the second week of August there, so it's still quite far off. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. It could still end up much further south as they did in earlier model runs. On this day, it was a terrible storm. It was Typhoon Nina, a strong Category 4, borderline Category 5 actually back in 1975. Made a very impressive landfall in Taiwan, then moved into China. And of course, a well-publicized story that this storm caused an extraordinary dam overspill and caused extreme destruction and over 200,000 fatalities over China, caused by extreme flooding from the dam break that occurred well inland. We also had 1p on the international dateline there in the southern hemisphere. How rare is that? Well, it happened on that day in that year. Back to today then, the next name in the Atlantic is Debbie. In the Eastern Pacific, it's going to be Daniel now, and in the Central Pacific, the next name is Hone. Well, code blue for the Atlantic, 28 storms so far this year. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Maria, and in the North Indian Ocean, it will be Asna. No real signs of that one yet, despite that inland disturbance over India. Well, in the Southern Hemisphere, of course, the season is yet to arrive. Obviously, different hemispheres. Other side of the equator, the Australian region, the next name is Robin. Southwest Indian Ocean is Ansha. And in the South Pacific, it is Pitta. That is all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow. Become an Ultimate Fan today.